Thanks to all of you for joining us for this really special event during Women's History Month. Special thanks to Veterans on Wall Street and UBS for helping to make this happen. I'm Anne-Marie Doherty, and I'm the CEO of the Bob Woodruff Foundation. BWF supports veterans and their families by shaping grants to organizations serving our nation's heroes in the most innovative and impactful ways. We're proud to be the strategic philanthropic partner for Veterans on Wall Street, which is truly a groundbreaking model for philanthropic engagement. For nearly 10 years, BWF has been the driving force behind applying the investments of VOWS partners to the areas where they can have the greatest impact on veterans. We lend our expertise to the 100+ firms in the VOWS consortium who want to ensure veterans land on their feet in a great new civilian career. Together, we work to make sure financial firms and top employers across all industries see veterans and military spouses as the tremendous asset that they are, while also ensuring that veterans have the support they need and deserve as they transition into civilian life. Today, you're going to hear from two incredibly impressive leaders at the top of their fields. Suni Harford is a founding sponsor of Veterans on Wall Street and serves on the Bob Woodruff Foundation's board of directors. She's also the president of asset management of UBS, one of the largest global asset managers. She's chair of UBS Asset Management's Executive Committee and Risk Committee, and is a member of the UBS Group Executive Board. Prior to joining UBS, Suni worked at Citigroup for almost 25 years, most recently as the regional head of markets for North America. This afternoon, Suni will be having a conversation with the esteemed Air Force General Jacqueline Van Ovost, commander of the Air Military Command at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. General Van Ovost is the nation's highest ranking woman in uniform. For context, there are 43 currently serving 4-star generals and admirals in the Department of Defense, and General Van Ovost is the only woman among those leaders. She graduated from the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1988 with a degree in aeronautical engineering. At the time, the Air Force wouldn't put a woman in the cockpit of a combat jet, but General Van Ovost had been flying since her teens with a dream of flying Mach 1 with her hair on fire. Eventually, General Van Ovost became a test pilot and combat aviation was open to women. Today, she's a command pilot with more than 4,200 hours in over 30 aircraft. In the last 32 years, she's commanded at every level of the Air Force. Her current command includes 107,000 airmen and encompasses 18th Air Force, the U.S. Air Force Expeditionary Center, the 618th Air Operations Center, and 17 wings and 2 groups within Air Mobility Command, which provide rapid global mobility for more than 100 locations worldwide. So talk about big, bold leadership. I am so honored to have both Suni and General Van Ovost here for this virtual conversation. So let's all give them a muted round of applause and welcome them both here today. Over to you, Suni.
Thanks so much, Anne-Marie. And I am so honored to be here myself in that it's like all of my favorite things coming together. Of course, the Bob Woodruff Foundation and all that Anne-Marie and the team do there. Veterans on Wall Street, which again, 10 years running for an original plan that was supposed to be 2 or 3 years. And of course, UBS is honored to be hosting this with our Veterans Network here. So to all the member firms and everybody participating today, it's great to have you here. So thank you for joining us. General Van Ovost, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's great to be here. Thanks, Anne-Marie, for that great introduction. I hope I'll live up to that fame. But Suni, thank you for what you do. Thanks for the foundations that come together that support our veterans. You know, what a great story you have there. And it's really heartwarming to hear that the veterans on Wall Street are out there making a difference even after they've exited the military.
Well, we hope so, and it is a great mix, and we'll talk a little bit about that purpose that the military seem to bring to every organization with which they work. So, General, let's talk a little bit about you, if we could, and start with Air Mobility Command. We have, again, a lot of veterans on the line who may be very familiar what that is, but I'm not sure everybody is. So can you talk to us a little bit about the organization and its mission and its role in national security, your role as commander of those operations?
Sure, thanks. So here at Air Mobility Command, we project what we call the joint force around the globe, and we provide hope. Frankly, we go from operations that do humanitarian assistance and disaster response all the way to full up conflict. So when we think about the assets and resources we bring to bear for the nation, you may see us. We fly those large cargo airplanes, that provide and bring troops forward to the forward line, and then we also bring back through aeromedical evacuation, our wounded troops back to secure hospitals back back here in the United States and in Europe. We also refuel those fighter airplanes. It's like a gas station in the sky where the fighter airplanes come up behind us, and we give them gas in the air so that they can turn and go after, say the ISIS, dropping bombs on ISIS out there in Afghanistan. Two, we have a global logistics network at airports around the world to receive our forces, personnel and cargo, and keep them moving along in the system. So we don't do it just for ourselves here in our Mobility Command. We do it for the entire Joint Force, meaning we move the Marines and the Army and even the new Space Force. So that's what we do around the world. We also do it here in the United States, frankly, Suni. You'll see us with our reserve partners fighting wildfires, where we have the chemicals that come out of the back of the airplanes to drop and fight wildfires. And even recently, when we had the winter storm Uri go through Texas, and frankly, there were some areas of Texas that didn't have water. You'll find us flying water into Texas and dropping it off for local communities. So we have a pretty wide swath. We were involved in a little bit of the COVID vaccine, not only a little bit of the distribution for soldiers overseas, but when this first kicked off, we actually were helping our stranded Americans overseas, picking them up, because remember, the airlines sort of stopped flying. We didn't know what to do, and it was really hard for them to get reservations on airlines. So we went out and got some of them. Again, American citizens around the world, whether they were in embassies or military personnel. So, and we've moved, supplies, PPE, syringes around to where we needed them the most here in the United States. So, what a rewarding mission, by the way. Our airmen love to do what we do because, again, one day we're helping our local neighbors in Texas, and in another day we're helping, helping eliminate some of the terrorist enemies that we have.
It's incredible. I will say, I was getting my, am I on mute?
You good?
Oh, sorry. I was getting my shot yesterday, for those that know me know that, and it was all military. It wasn't the Air Force, because we were on the ground, but it was the armed forces, as far as the eye could see, to keep us all safe. So that's a great perspective to have and remind us that's there. I think of Air Force One, the movie, Air Force One, in that mid-air refueling. When you talk about that, it really is quite something to picture in your brain. And then you talk about being the space program as well. I mean, it really is incredible how far-reaching the remit is. So thank you for that.
I should have mentioned that we also are responsible for Air Force One and all those beautiful blue and white airplanes that bring our diplomats overseas. When we land overseas in one of those airplanes, it demonstrates America's strength, America's power, and that we're there to negotiate or support an agreement in any way. And while as we don't have that many of those airplanes, every one of those missions is really important, with the Vice President, Secretary of State, our Congress, and a very key mission for Air Mobility Command.
No, it's really inspiring. So speaking of inspiring, why the Air Force? Why did you choose to join in the first place, the Academy? And you've stayed obviously for a very long time. So what has inspired you, and what took you down your path to your current command?
Yeah, thanks. When I was growing up, I was interested in flying, and I was in a really good position. My father eventually owned a flying business. And so I learned how to fly at an early age. I actually got my pilot's license before I got my driver's license. And it led me to some really cool opportunities as a kid. One, flying banners down the beach in Florida, advertising for Joe's Crab Shack. Two, eventually teaching people how to fly. which again, and that early on, there weren't that many women instructors either. But I tell you, I wanted to do something more than fly the small general aviation airplanes. And I didn't want to fly the airlines, even though there were, bigger jets. I wanted to fly Mach 1 with my hair on fire. Like Emery said, I wanted to go do something important. And I really, frankly, I love the physics of it all. I was quite a geek. And the science and the math behind, you're just looking at a wing, you're thinking, how is it we're actually flying right now? How does that make sense that we're flying right now? And I really enjoyed learning about that. And the Air Force Academy provided an opportunity for me to not only get a high-grade aerospace engineering degree, but allowed me to get in line to vie for a pilot slot in the United States Air Force, which was a dream to me. So I went to the Air Force Academy, but I tell you, it was not always been roses. The first time I applied for the academy, I didn't get in because I failed a physical fitness exam. I couldn't do a pull-up, and that's attention to detail, and I won't mess that up again. But it was determination and grit that said, okay, I'm going to wait another year because I'm not going to give up on my dreams. So sometimes something happens in your life, you just can't give up. You got to keep going for your passion, and if that's your passion, you go for it again. Don't let anyone else tell you no. Only you can tell you no. Then I went to the academy, and again, I graduated, went to pilot training, and like Henry said, combat aviation was not open to women, but I placed myself in the best position possible to be able to go to test pilot school, where I knew I'd be able to fly fighter jets because that was part of test pilot school. So instead of just flying a single fighter jet, in the end, I got to fly 30 plus types of airplanes. And got to do what I love to do. And I did get to go, frankly, the speed of a bullet, twice the speed of sound, which I thought was really fantastic. And then over the years, I really just focused on being the best I could be in the positions that I was given. And I really felt like when you were doing your best, more opportunities came to you, and then it was just up to you to capitalize on those opportunities. And so I kept going. And I really feel like, I had to come out of the cockpit a couple of times as I worked some policy things. Very important that you become more broadening as you go up in the ranks. You get to do less, if you will, stock trading and more strategizing about how to do stock trading. And so in this, doing the strategy work I was doing was actually very rewarding because you could actually affect more of the Air Force and frankly more of the Department of Defense by doing those things. And so I sit here over 3 decades later, saying that I loved every position I got, and including the ones that I was deployed. I learned a lot. I learned from a lot of great people. I've had great examples, and I try to make myself better in every day, and I'm still reading, I'm still learning from other folks, and I find it a challenge and joy to continue to work here in the military.
It's incredible. We've heard some from really special leaders, females this month, and the various things, and I'm sure every firm has done as well. But that is a consistent theme, right? Liking what you do, being challenged, aspiring to learn all the time. So it's interesting to hear that inspires you, even in a career as unique as yours has been. So if we think about the fact, again, I would love to be in a world where we don't have to mention diversity, and it would just happen to be that we're talking to a 4-star general, but you are the only female 4-star general at the Department of Defense in the United States and the highest ranking woman in the US military, as Anne-Marie said. So what does that mean to you? Does it mean anything to you? Is that just, a day at the office and that's okay? How do you think about that? And what does that accomplishment mean to you uniquely?
Yeah, it's nothing that I really focus on, except when you get into a room of 4 stars and you look around and, no one looks like you, right? At first it feels like a little lonely. What's going on here? And I'm super excited, by the way, that Lieutenant General 3-star Laura Richardson from the Army has just been nominated for her 4th star. And so when she pins on, there'll be 2 of us. So we doubled the amount. I'm pretty excited about that. But look, let me acknowledge that firsts are important, right? And when we're talking about diversity, being the first African American, being the first woman to do something, that's important, right? Because it shows others that it can be done, right? You can't be what you can't see. And when I was just talking to a bunch of young ladies at the Jackie Joyner Kersey Center, and saying that you have to be able to see yourself, have the confidence that someone above you has done this, and it can be done, right? So that's important. And I never strive to be the first at anything. Frankly, I just kept my head down. I just tried to marry my passions, my talents, right? Looking at my strengths, try to minimize my weaknesses, and go make a difference. And I also did it my way, frankly. There were times that people told me, no, you can't fly combat. You can't come to the academy because you can't do a pull-up. You can't, right? And so I took that as a challenge every time. You can call me stubborn. I'm Dutch. You can call me stubborn. It's okay. But I feel like it's one of those, I never gave up, right? Never give up on myself. Never give up on yourself, right?
Well, and the system too, a little bit, I suppose. I can think about the number of people along your way that would have never expected to see you where you are today, and I hope they're paying attention.
Trust me. I remember those words from several people who said I wouldn't go anywhere, and that I should be doing other things as opposed to this in my career. But haters will be haters, right? I stayed focused on what I thought the Air Force needed. And I had great mentors who said to me, you could do this. You would be a great commander. You would be a great this. And, so I went for it. But to go back to what you said, but because others broke the glass ceilings and got into positions like I'm in right now, I can look back and help shape the policies and the guidance so that we don't inadvertently, steer other talent away because of some outdated policy. And I'm happy to talk about the policies that we've changed, but that's so important that you have a diverse look at the problem set and say, oh, if you're trying to get more talent, then why are we doing this? Well, because this is what we did in 1947, and we just haven't looked at it. Well, someone needs to look at this problem a different way, right? We cannot continue to think the same way and expect a different outcome. You want more talent, you got to open up the roles to do that. And you've got to make it easier for women to say, I know I can go to the Air Force, into the service, and have a rewarding career, right? Not just that I could do it. Of course you could do it. Yes, of course you can do that. But is it rewarding? Do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel like you're included, right? That's when you're going to do your best work. And those are the kinds of barriers we got to knock down in all areas, not just in the military.
Yeah, for sure. That is true in every industry. It's certainly true in the financial services industry, and we hear it time and time again. And the talent is there. And again, the idea that you're going to shut off 50% of the world's talent pool really makes no sense. So agree that that's critical. But on that same line, then, right? If we think about diversity and inclusion, it's good business, as we say it here, because it is the best talent and it gives you the best access to that talent. Diversity and inclusion is also an element, as you say, of ethical leadership, right? So what can leaders do so people from all walks of life feel welcome? I imagine that would be harder still in the military than it is every day, where we've got maybe some more flexibility on how we do outreach and whatnot. So tell us about that. How do you think about that?
Yeah, first of all, we a lot of discussion about culture and diversity and inclusion in the military. But when as leaders, recognize that it's my responsibility to set the culture of the unit or the organization or your section, right? And that culture has to ensure that every member feels connected and valued, included in the decisions of that organization for that mission, right? They feel like they have every opportunity to succeed and their voice is heard, right? That you understand and that their voice is heard. But you and I both know that there's a difference between being accepted onto the team and being included onto the team. So let me start when I was a younger pilot and women were first allowed into combat, into fighting fighters. They were accepted by the law, right? It was the law that kept them out. It wasn't the military, but they weren't used to seeing females on the flight line, and they're not used to seeing females in the brief. So when I got there and sat down, there was a recognition that, yep, you're a pilot. Yep, you're going to fly the F-16. I got it. but there was no, I didn't feel included. I didn't feel like my voice mattered, like my opinion on this tactics stuff didn't really matter. Now, when we have many more women that fly fighters and fly airplanes in the Department of the Air Force, and now when you enter a flight room, you don't only feel included, your opinion is asked for. Like, you don't say something, they ask you, right? And that's generally true now. So that's a big change. So if you walk into a new work environment, or you get a new employee on board and you welcome them with open arms and walk them around and show them their new best friends in this section, and it's not only explain to them in words, but in actions that their inputs matter. They're more likely to tell you when you're going the wrong way, when you could be making a bad decision, or include that small piece of information that you really needed that before you made that decision, right? So only at that time do they feel like that they can be safe enough to give you their opinion. And so when I look back at that now, when I have our corporate board meetings, if you will, for lack of a better word, I look around the table when we're talking about a critical issue, because in the end, I have to make that decision. And I want to hear from everybody. Then if there's someone twiddling their thumbs or looking down, I know that they're part of this and they're not saying something, I'll ask them. So Johnny, what do you think? So, Jenny, what do you think? Is I want to make sure that I am paying them. Now that they know that I will ask them, okay, they will speak up, right? They know that if I look around the room, don't make eye contact with me because I'm asking you. So I just want to make sure that they're included. But and in the end, I'll make the decisions, whatever it needs to be. And I want a team that's completely open and transparent with me. And the only way to do that is to start with me being open and transparent.
Yep. I think that is critical, right? Asking the question until people get used to that type of discussion and that everybody's going to be included or called on or whatever. So that is really great advice. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about missions. You've been on many, many missions, and as you say, from a variety of objectives of those missions. Working on Wall Street in general and financial services, maybe any company, but requires careful analysis of risk and reward, right? Cost benefit analysis, or what type of risks you're taking. So that obviously is very much a part of what you do every day, along with other military leaders. So tell us how you think about that. How do you balance risk and reward when it comes to accomplishing your mission? Do you have a good example you can share? Have you ever had to pull the proverbial plug because the risks were too great versus what you hope to achieve?
Yeah, thanks, Suni. First of all, so we're in the military, but you in the financial sector, you're a key part of our national security, right? Our democratic values, our capitalistic society is the underbone. It's the girding of our national success. And sustainability for America is dependent upon it. Okay, it's dependent on you and Wall Street, and it's dependent on us here in national security. Where we work is hand in hand. So I would venture to say the kinds of risks that you deal with at your level are just as substantial as the kind of risks I deal with at my level. So I can probably learn a lot from you. But let me start with, when I don't know if this is the same, but when you're a little lower level and you're on the floor, you're doing lower level work with respect to risks, you're taught certain risk paradigms, right? So for us, when you're flying a combat mission, there are things that you look at, especially with the crew. Before the mission, you look at, did you sleep well? What's the weather like? Is it combat or not? What is the actual mission? How hard it is? How many hours are you going to be flying? And you look at these things and you kind of grade yourself based on, okay, I think I'm about at this quantitative level, and that level is going to tell me something about what I think the total risk of the mission is. And that's just one mission of many missions to achieve an objective, right? So at that level, you can, as the lead, the commander of the mission, you could say, we're not going to do this because it's too risky, right? The reward, the outcome of doing this training mission, this combat mission is too risky. Now, not too many combat missions I'd call too risky, but you have a say in that discussion. And then superiors above you will talk with you about, okay, what are the ways to mitigate that? Right? It's just like being a supervisor on the floor, and you're like, hey, what are the ways? What have you thought about these other things to mitigate that risk? So that's sort of a quantitative way, but it's never perfect because you never know. If you take off and have an engine fire, right, and that changes everything right from the get-go. So let me take that sort of example and put it up at the more strategic level with respect to how do you string all the missions together, something in front of a level that you might be at. And let me talk about when I was the policy lead for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is our most senior joint military leader. And I was the policy lead for Europe, NATO, Russia. And this is the time when Russia invaded Crimea and the eastern part of Ukraine. And we were trying to determine, I was to come up with several options for the Secretary of Defense and the chairman to move forward on policy on how to support Ukraine in their time of crisis against Russia, right? So this was sort of a high stakes discussion. And we had this discussion and we came up with some options, and there were certainly some options that the United States of America could do right away and could have great effect pretty quickly, okay? But one of the options I brought forward was, hey, what makes more sense for the long term is to get with NATO, which is 28 nations over in Europe that form the NATO alliance, and work with them. And that's 28 nations, that's 28 different negotiations, 28 different sets of nations that have different interests than yours, and come up with a solution that's going to support Ukraine, but it's more sustainable because I have everybody's buy-in, right? It's not everything that we might have done had we done it alone, but it's more sustainable. It's better for the long term. And frankly, Ukraine, it was in their backyard and not in ours. So I thought about the short term versus the long term, what would benefit us the most. It takes a little longer, but we could get there. And, and indeed, of course we went, because NATO's a strong alliance with us, we spent that time to do that work to get after a policy solution. So that's, two ways to balance it. There's the short-term piece, the tactical piece where you can make maybe some more mistakes. Then there's the long-term piece where you need to, head towards the guiding light, the strategic intent, and do your best to point to it, although it's not perfect, but you have a longer-term solution. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes great sense. And as generous as you are that Wall Street, and I do buy the economic security matters for the country, but I heard you say policy lead to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs for Europe, NATO, and Russia, and I'm sorry, I can't even think of anybody that works on Wall Street that could go there. So, but I do appreciate it. And the interesting thing is you talked about it, right? The strategic perspective, the long-term horizon. We're all investors. We are constantly fighting, I think, in our industry against what we'll call short-termism, right? The next quarter's results, the next quarter's deal flow. And the answer is we need to have a long-term strategy in order to create a sustainable business, a business that can withstand a market cycle like we see the volatility we're seeing even just this week. So these are very real points for us. So appreciate that. So speaking of long-term, what does the future of the U.S. military look like? I mean, you've seen a lot in your 30 plus years, I think already, but as you look forward, what is it? What do you think what does it look like? I guess I don't know how to say it otherwise.
Yeah, no, well, Suni, look, bring me back to Wall Street. Look, we all have a common problem. China is going, their economy is going to surpass our economy, and you may know the numbers better. I'm hearing about 2028. That's like tomorrow in strategic terms, okay? What does that mean for us? Are you comfortable that if the dollar is not shapes the global economy, if that's not the basis for the global economy, what does that mean? So, let me tell you what it means to me is that there's an adversary who is pressing their case in Asia and around the world and strong-arming people around the world and is trying to gather resources. They don't have a lot of allies right now, but they're trying to gather resources so they can become even stronger. So, when I think about it, I'm a little concerned, don't get me wrong, democracy is important, right? Our economy is decently strong, and how we think about things, the innovation we have in our nation, we have all the raw elements to continue to be a very strong economy. We have just got to help together focus our nation on STEM and on research that's going to keep us out there in 5G, in quantum, in AI. Because any one of those things, if we're being surpassed by, it's an exponential problem because it moves so fast if they get a leg up, right? So when I think about that problem set, and I think about the great minds that we have, and when you use all the talents of America, right, and you become focused on that strategic end for America, not just for a single sector, but for America. I know I got the economy up and down. We've been energizing the defense industrial base, right? You've heard some things about what we're trying to do is we're trying to inshore sourcing capabilities and chips and whatnot because of getting threats into our system and into our parts from other locations. So we're going to depend on every single talent. So in the military, then we're depending on every single talent. So we are opening up the roles to say and trying to eliminate any barriers to anyone wanting to serve and bringing their very talented minds to the military. But I'm focused on STEM and the digital age, right? We know that we've just birthed a space force, the sixth force in the military, sixth service, right? Because we're competing in space against China and Russia, right? And so we are going to need the best minds for space, for maritime, for land, for air, for cyber, all working together to ensure the security of this nation. And the only way we do that is through industry. So 80% of our RDT now, research, development, test, and engineering, come from industry now. It used to be way in the back day, Manhattan Project and all that, it was all run by the military. And the Department of Defense had a huge research budget. We don't do that now. We look to the industries to help the industries to show us the innovative ways forward. We have to be able to move at speed and scale that we've never seen before. We have to be able to sense, to make sense, to decide, and to act in a much faster loop than our enemy, who's already trying to apply machine learning, automation, artificial intelligence. And our competitors have no qualms about stealing your IP, about international norms, whether that be in space or with humans or with animals or with our climate. They're willing to do whatever. You may have seen, the experiments going on in China with respect to they're absorbing all your data. They can identify you because all the facial recognition matching in all the cities. Your private stuff is not private in China. So we think about how we have to get ahead of that in a society where we have liberties, right? We want to protect our property. We want to protect our people. And what's that balance there? So again, we're all in with the defense industrial base, but you've seen some concerns with respect to, hey, what are you doing with AI? What are the norms for AI? What does that mean to have a robot doing? Okay, those are important conversations and we should set those norms, but be aware, our competitors are not. So that's the long-term discussion. The short-term discussion on, do I want AI to make a certain decision? Okay, well, what's the long-term implications of that? What's the long-term implications of our IP leaving America and going somewhere else, getting reverse engineered and sold? Right? If you put a business in China, you know more than me about what they owe China when they do that. So I won't speak to that. The only way we're going to survive is if we had STEM. China graduates more STEM graduates than we graduate all graduates in high school. And where do you think that acceleration is going to be? And by the way, they don't choose it; they're chosen, right? You will do this, right? You will go into this field. Yeah. Well, I talk about matching your passions and your talents. In other nations, that's not the case. Okay, but this is not all dooms, right? because we have innovative people who are free to think and free to come up with great ideas. As long as we can keep those ideas inshore and that we understand them and we can leverage them, we have a leg up. I really believe that. And so when I think of the digital future, I need digitally adept servicemen who understand AI, who perhaps in 10 years, coding is going to be normal for everybody coming out of school. But you have to understand the equipment you're working with. In this case, in the digital age, we have to understand what the data is doing, where it's at, how I can use it better to make sense, decide and act in the national security realm. And I would think that you're probably doing the same kinds of things on Wall Street when you're trying to predict what could happen in the long term and in the short term. I know that was a long answer. I'm not totally.
That was a great answer. Again, hard to compare what we do with what you were talking about in the military, but you raised a great discussion point, which is to the skills and STEM education and AI and some of those things. But let's talk about the other skills, really that you see the successful folks in the military or things the military teaches you. Someone told me very, very long time ago that the U.S. military is the only institution in the world that actually teaches leadership, right? So what about that? What are the other sides of talent that military members possess, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, first of all, that's exactly correct. We teach you leadership early on. The first thing we do is we teach you followership, and then we just teach small group leadership. And that's sort of where the dynamics are. You're kind of awkward. You're coming out of high school. We throw you into a team and you have to make some decisions. Now, the risk reward of those decisions is lower level early on, but you gain confidence in yourself when you get to lead teams, right? Then you recognize where you're short, frankly, but also where you have your strengths, and you play to your strengths and you try to shore up your weaknesses, or more importantly, find somebody else who has a different experience, different background, and has the different talents that's going to complement you on your team. So we teach you how to make that team of teams to get out after an objective. The other thing that does, because of the small groups, is frankly, it's like family, right? It's being together, doing a mission that's greater than any one of yourselves, not, no disrespect, not for profit, but for a mission that supports the United States of America. And you can see that evolve. You can see what your work is doing, whether you're working with an ally or partner to increase their interoperability or increase their capabilities, or you're bringing, a disaster relief to a nation, or even in America, when we have in the wake of hurricanes, us standing up an airport and bringing in water and food for Americans, right outside the city limits. I mean, you have this intense bond that you get by being in these small teams. And then we just continue to build from there. Small team leadership, the larger team leadership. And all along that's wrapped up in those values, right? In the Air Force, integrity, service, excellence, but frankly, it's a whole set of values and qualities that we look for in our leaders. And again, we have, professional courses they go to. We do sports, right? Because I believe in sports, that's the ultimate, small team work that you get to get after an objective. And we put you on this path for growth that allows you to get to a place where you command other airmen or other servicemen. I mean, you're responsible for them, you're responsible for their families and the mission. And there is no greater responsibility than to have that up underneath you. And it's really the first time you command, it is a big deal, just because you feel like the weight of the world's on your shoulders as you're taking care of the mission and these airmen. And then when you see them thrive and you see them do great, right, and you're coaching and mentoring them, and they get out there and crush the mission, you're just so proud, like you are any one of your family members or kids when it happens. And that's that instilled camaraderie that the military brings to any table, and whether when they come out of the military and they're part of something else, that's what they bring. They want to bring that camaraderie right to that location. That's what they miss the most when they leave our military.
And that sense of purpose we had talked about when we met earlier about, the purpose statement of a firm, and feeling not just the camaraderie, but that you know, that one bond, that you've got the same mission, that you've got an objective that everybody shares. And we found, and I'm going to guess probably every one of the hundreds of people listening right now have that sense of service, right? They come with a view toward the community that they work with, and they want to make it better, and they want to participate. And I am not, I am embarrassed to say, a military veteran, but boy, I love working with these teams, as I have had the privilege to do over the years, because that sense of service is really unique. And it's really something that adds tremendous value to any organization that these veterans join in. We're lucky to have them.
Let me just add that, you know, it's always heartwarming to see them out into the community, and they're not looking, you know, when they do the volunteerism, they're genuinely looking at problems, saying, you know, I have the skill sets to fix this. Why don't you let me fix this? Let me work with you to fix it. And the fact that they're not shy to do that, and they're not looking for any sort of recognition. They just want that sense, that same sense they felt in the military, sense that they are valued now in their communities even more because of the outreaches that they're doing. They're feeling that sense of worth. And I'm not saying that, you know, when they move on to another job, they're not getting a sense of worth. They may very well be, but they're going to look for something more than a job. Okay, that sense of making a difference is so driving when they leave, that they're going to find their way, and they're going to do great things.
Yeah, and we've seen it time and time again. So could not agree with you more. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and we've got some questions coming in from the audience. So let me just start with one. This is a great one. So you are at the top of your game. What do you feel you still have to accomplish in the military and in your career?
Yeah, so, you know, first of all, when I think about what I want to accomplish, it's not necessarily associated with the career. I still feel I'm gonna, you know, I think about the veterans on Wall Street, I think about our veterans around the world, and I think about, you know, eventually this career, I will turn this uniform in, and I will be out in the civilian world, and I have so much I want to do. I want to mentor our youth in STEM. I'm a huge STEM advocate. I think that STEM is key to our economy, and it's key to our security into the future. And so I want to be a part of that, and make sure that I am out there, and that I stoke that passion, that same passion I felt, you know, when I was 12 years old, and said, you know, this whole airplane thing, this looks kind of interesting. How does this fly? Why does this work? And I want to find those folks that are out there that do that, and especially, frankly, in the underrepresented groups, right, in our minority groups, because I really feel like they just need a hand up, just a understanding of what's around them, so that they can take advantage of that into the future. So I'm big into plugging people into the places they need to go, and matching the talent and the passions out there. And that forever, I'm sure I'm going to do right up until the end, because you know, we need more folks out there doing that. And then in the career, you know, frankly, like I said, I'm super excited. I've been nominated to another position, another 4-star position, which is going to be phenomenal. And, you know, pending confirmation, I'm going to do my very, very best in that position to take care of all the servicemen and women underneath me, and make sure that they're getting the maximum out of them. They're making sure that there's no barriers to their full success, so that the command can be successful. So I really believe that we have to unlock everybody's potential. There are people that are locked, and they're locked because we have, you know, potentially policies and guidelines that we didn't mean to, but we have an unintended bias towards not developing. And it's so important that every one of them, I call them total force airmen, our Guard, Reserve, our airmen in uniform, and our civilians, that every one of them deserves to be developed and understood. And so that is my passion for the remainder of time that I'll be in this career.
Well, it does not surprise me that you want to continue to serve, as we were saying, every military person does. But obviously, you've been doing it for longer and more successfully than most. So not surprising there. All right. You have shared a lot of really valuable lessons with us, so I appreciate it. So if you had to leave one leadership lesson that you've learned over the course of your career, maybe one that wasn't easy to learn, what would it be?
Yeah, so first of all, I started off a little early with my philosophy of don't let somebody else tell you no. Okay, only you can tell you no. I really feel like it's a passion to ensure that there's opportunity for everybody who wants it. Not everybody wants it, and I get that from a military perspective. You can serve the military not just in uniform, you can serve it as a civilian in the Department of Defense, or you can serve it as in the defense industry, trying to find the right innovative solutions to ensure the security of America. So there's lots of ways that you can serve, but don't let someone else's biases stop you from matching your talent, your passion, going after your dreams. And then a lesson I learned early in my career, I felt as one of the very few women who were flying at the time, that I didn't want to set myself apart. I don't want to make a big splash of who I was. I just wanted to do well. I wanted, because I was given this opportunity, I wanted to do the very best. I wanted other people to say, you know what? Oh, I guess a woman can do that. And so I didn't really pay attention to the kudos, the accolades. I just worked really hard, and I got to the next position. I worked really hard. And frankly, I never really networked either, because I didn't want anyone thinking that I was networking with those girls over there or whatever, and that somehow that was going to give me a leg up. I wanted to be just focused on doing this job, because there weren't many women, and people I would be networking with were not pilots. Since then, I have learned that was very short-sighted. A network is so important. Not just people in your career field doing what you do, but people who support your career. In other words, people that you need to do the entire mission, okay? And that comes from the infrastructure, people who built the buildings and keep the air conditioning running, to people who make decisions. I mean, it's the entire ecosystem, and you learning about that and having a network of people that understand that is so important to widen your perspective as early as possible, so that you can make better decisions at your level, right? At echelon, we call it. But my job is to solve, I say, my boss's problem. And I begin to see what my boss's problem is when I look larger. And that network would have helped me there. And that network, I think, when I talk about the three most important people in your life, the first important person is the person who went before you. Could be a trailblazer, could be a first, could be an only, but show that it could be done and widen the path. The second person is the person who walks beside you, the one who mentors you, the one who helps you when you stumble, right? And says, you can do this. And the one you look at when you look behind you and you give them a hand up and not a hand out. Someone who needed that encouragement behind you that said, you know what, I can do that too. And I'm watching you widen that trail, and I'm not going to do it exactly like you, but I'm going to do something. And you seeded that in that person behind you, three most important people. And you need all of them in your life to have a satisfying career. Enjoy those moments when you do well. You deserve that praise. You deserve to be at the table. You need to be ready to be at the table and participate, but you deserve that praise. And when you can celebrate and people see that joy in your life, then they want to be you. Because if you're going through life and you're doing great, but you're not enjoying any of it, people look at you and go, well, why would I want to be her? Right? Celebrate your success.
That is fabulous. And I was going to ask another question, but I'm going to end on that one. That is the greatest definition of network that I've ever heard. And I do think networks are critical. People talk about mentors and whatnot, but the network is there at all times. And again, in front of you, beside you, and behind you is a great way to encapsulate that. So General Van Ovost, I cannot thank you enough for sharing these stories with us and for giving us this advice. It really is quite inspiring. And of course, thank you so much for everything you do every day for our country, for the world, and certainly for all of the men and women in uniform with whom you work. It is inspiring to have met such a leader as yourself. So thank you very, very much for that. Thank you again to the Bob Woodruff Foundation, to Veterans on Wall Street, Women Veterans on Wall Street, as well as all the Veterans Networks, and of course to our own UBS for hosting us today. Thank you so much, General. It was an absolute honor to meet you.
Thanks, Suni, and thanks to all our veterans out there. Thank you for your service. Thank you for continuing to serve. You make us proud. Thanks.
Thank you very much.